What's on your mind today to chat about?
Well, I guess it's been a pretty classic week for me in the sense of like we had quite a tough week last week. The TAV held up
Mhm.
okay, Clifton slid a bit, but overall we just had slow sales midweek. Labour management wasn't quite where it needed to be. We got a little bit underpowered on some shifts. We got a management meeting this week, and for the first time, we're pulling the two sides together. It's like getting back to basics, man. It went through the agenda today this morning with Ben. It's like shift setup stuff, some communication, core communication stuff. Don't tell me that something's broken. Tell me exactly how it's broken and what I can do to fix it. Things like that.
Guess you forget that when you've worked with certain people for a long time, like that's just very natural, isn't it? It's all the stuff that happens very naturally when you've worked with people for a long time, right?
Yeah, and particularly, yeah, when you have been in the business a lot and then you're trying to step away, yeah, it's frustrating when these things don't stick. But it's been one of those weeks that is like reminds you of some of the eternal truths of hospitality. I always think about the Danny Meyer thing about the salt shaker theory.
Uh-huh.
We're resetting the salt shaker. We're explaining to the team why they need to, make sure that everything, all the mise en place is done properly every day, all the time, all the 100 little boring things that need to be done all the time. And it's easy at some point to stop talking about it and just think, well, that's done now. It's never done.
Oh
It's
yeah,
never
like
done.
it's never done, and also like as soon as you stop talking about it, it becomes totally fine never to do it, and then it's super hard to reset.
Yeah, exactly. So we're trying to catch some things before it gets too hard or really, really hard to reset. So that, and then, obviously it's been a bit of a turbulent week in the broader news of the Labour and stuff. I don't know what this potential shake-up in the leadership might mean for hospitality and for business. 'Cause it doesn't feel good at the moment because all the details have dropped right off the agenda as we get into a sort of Labour psychodrama. And then you hope that whoever picks up the mantle almost feels inevitable at this stage that there's going to be a leadership contest, and then there'll be a new leader, but maybe not. And then you think, are any business improvements to some of the core business policy that could help hospitality grow and accelerate on anyone's agenda? Because it's not currently part of anyone's platform. That feels obvious, but I'm not hearing about any sort of or supply side reform stuff that or anything to do with pubs or any of the headline stuff that you usually hear that gets traction about pub closures and growth in the job sector and workers and all that stuff.
All the problems they're even more macro though, aren't they now? It's not even like industry specific. It feels like it's just, you know, it's a whole vicious cycle. The cycle's not really working, but I'm not sure how anyone's going to solve that.
Well, yeah, and it sort of goes to the heart of the frustrating nature of politics at the moment, which is that people offering simple solutions to really deep-seated structural problems with the economy, and that kind of aren't going to get turned around quickly.
But like a new leader's not going to solve that at all, is it?
No, not at all. There's no party that can solve it. It takes a while to get into this mess, and we have done over the last 15 years. And it's going to take a while to get out of it. And there's some tough decisions to be made.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like we're going to get anything this year, really. When we were talking about with Tom Stanley and everyone a couple of months ago now, there's just nothing on the agenda at the moment. And if you think forward to a budget, budget announcement at the end of the year now, like 6 months away, like, is it even likely that, it doesn't feel like we're going to get a VAT rate reduction. I can't imagine anything changing with business rates. What would you want? Or not what would you want? Because there's loads of things you'd want, but like, what can we reasonably expect, you think, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about reversing the national insurance contribution, rises and things like that. VAT is the thing that would help immediately and be the sort of biggest and sort of most coherent, like across the board, helping everyone solution, which wouldn't necessarily be, then it doesn't need huge amount of administration, or it's not complex. It's a simple idea. Probably is the most costly thing to the treasury, but it's really simple to administer because it's all being done already. You just change the number. And it's really easy during COVID just to flick that switch. I was listening to an old UK hospitality podcast, Kate Nichols talking to someone about what we were hoping. This was going back to 2022
Mhm.
or 23 or something. And I thought I'd just be interested to go back and listen to what we were talking about 3 years ago. Like almost nothing that was, we're working hard on this, we're talking about that, we're hoping for this. Almost nothing has happened in 3 years. I don't think anything that was being talked about at the time in that sort of post-COVID recovery thing.
Yeah. But I wonder, like, if actually, so during COVID, physical retail and service-based businesses were like a big obvious thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, they were not open, so there was a lot of public focus on it, and it was very visceral, right? Like things weren't open. I can't do the things I want to do. I can't go shopping. I can't, go to the pub. And so the government sort of reacted quite strongly to it as a way for them to show they were doing things, like supporting those sectors. It's no longer a place where they can effectively get kudos for.
Yeah, and people have short memories, right? There were those moments in time. We launched the tab in that kind of sweet spot, and we had so much press, and we were front page of the New York Times, for Christ's sake. It was kind of mad. It was like radio programs from all over the country, all over the world. There was a Japanese radio program that came to broadcast from the pub, and people were so interested in the pub. And we were in the absolute sweet spot of pubs reopening. So like people rediscovering third spaces, getting out of their houses and engaging with other people and community, and the role that pubs play in that and how important they are and all that stuff. Just like getting back to normal life, having a
Yeah.
meeting with your mates and having a laugh. And then the TAV particularly had its own story about the sort of knockdown, illegally demolished, and community fought for it to be rebuilt. This was the culmination of all of that happening in one go. So we had this amazing relaunch. And it felt like just a moment in time, and we were kind of acutely aware of that this isn't 6 months later, everyone's forgotten about it almost. And like,
Mhm.
oh, we're back, And I think periodically pubs and hospitality have moved up the agenda at times, but it tends to be quite narrow time windows of pub closures. But everyone's heard that story 100 times. And then the numbers are huge. That people say, 16,000 pubs have closed in the last year or whatever it is. I don't think people can really grasp hold of that. They become a bit meaningless because it feels like it's been 10,000 pubs closing every year
Yeah, for
forever.
10 years.
At some point, I guess people go, so what? Sadly, I think that is ultimately where we sit in the kind of political agenda is this, so what? Interestingly, I was listening to a bit on the Today programme today, and Sajid Javid was talking about, they launched this big thing called the National Conversation or something. And they're doing like a huge listening project where they're trying to kind of capture everyone's attitudes about Britain, what makes Britain a great place, and kind of understand what people are thinking about the country and what binds us, what unites us, how to be positive about the space. Because in Javid's words, he's like extremely concerned that politics and society is fracturing to the point where it's extremely polarized. Everyone's angry all the time. We're losing track of what actually binds us and how we have positive impact on our communities and our lives and all that stuff. Didn't catch the start of it, but as he was talking about it and talking about all those things, I just thought, well, pubs are so central, and hospitality in general, I think, is so central to most people's lives in terms of how they interact with communities and in their day-to-day life, like how you create human connection, which is kind of what he's talking about. It's like we want to move away from these technical conversations about the economy growing, and because that's really important to be able to do the things we need to do and create a prosperous country and all that. But at the end of the day, what do people want? They want meaningful human connection and positive, like safe communities, and kind of go out there and have fun. One way I started to think, my mind was whirring about like how to bring hospitality into that part of the current conversation in politics and try and make it central to the agenda.
Do you think like something that the government could do, is it like reversing the national insurance stuff, or is it actually finding ways for the public to because I guess a lot of this is sentiment driven, right? People don't go out because they feel like things are a bit tough, or they feel like they should be saving more, or they feel like there's under pressure with, money. Do you think that's the way to kickstart it? Or do you think actually we're almost past that and what we need is something structural to like effectively help the P&L?
Well, I think there's two things there. Speed of reaction to news with regards to consumer confidence. I think that's accelerated. So there is so much negativity out there that you're almost getting told. I think like in general, but also in hospitality as well. Like everyone's saying, "Oh, it's so hard. It's everything's so expensive, it's so tough, blah blah blah. Oh, it's such a hard industry to work in. It's the toughest industry, blah blah blah. And then also, it's everything's really expensive. It's so hard to run your business, which is, there's obviously truth in all of that. But if you constantly are telling everyone that stuff's really expensive and the economy's knackered and there's no money, and people feel that. And I think because information moves so much faster and it's so much more aggressive in its in a way, it can kind of be beamed directly to people's phones and channels and whatever. I think in some ways people are more engaged with politics than ever, but
Mhm.
it is like fairly miserable messages kind of going out. So yeah, people are reacting to that, and it's interesting. Again, listening to this podcast is something that Kate Nichols was talking about. Is that consumer confidence is super reactive. A load of miserable messages go out at the start of the week. At the end of the week, people are tightening their budgets, and it is happening faster and faster. And we're all more in tune with sort of global, macroeconomic trends and how that might affect us down the line with energy, and because we've seen such sharp increases in prices. And we're now all experts in international oil shipping
Mhm.
lanes and, and what's going on in global affairs in a way that 20 years ago just didn't it wasn't really part of the
Yeah.
sort of day-to-day conversation for most people. So I think that, yeah, like the consumer confidence bit is true. And then in terms of how to help the industry, or where, like, do we need this big some space to be created in the P&L? Yeah. I mean, I think absolutely. And I think about, is it Gary Usher as the chef in the Manchester area? He's, got loads of really great bistros and stuff. But I keep seeing him popping up on social media. He's quite vocal on social media about, it's just like it's impossible to run a restaurant now. I guess what he means is it's possible in a certain type of restaurant to like invest in quality and training and people and nice stuff. You can run it if you're doing massive volume or you're a part of a big multi-site sort of chain and you get these incredible efficiencies. Hard to do small independent high end
Yeah.
or quality
Was it I'm
restaurants.
sure I saw Jason Atherton said something similar. Is he going more international in order to I think he said, like, subsidize the UK or something?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's lots of people are saying, like, everyone's saying the same thing, right? Yeah, and in my business, we are operating. Last week was tough, and we weren't made any money last week. In one site, we might have lost money, and it's sort of because we're in a bit of a period of over investing in certain things and trying to train and trying to get everything up and running from a new opening. So yeah, we are. That's concerning, and we can't just keep doing that week on week. We can't have that. Otherwise, we'll go under in a few months. It's not. We were sort of always on the edge, though, and that's quite a stressful place to be for every operator. But at the same time, yeah, I think that you've also got it like the one thing that can create space really is probably, yeah, probably like VAT, because that's a huge cash injection into the business immediately. A massive cost that you don't suddenly have to pay out. Like I'm just about
Yeah,
to
I
do.
guess, or something you can, you pass some of it back to the public and, create some more value in other places, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's a sort of reinvestment thing. I think there's a perception that if you're not paying all this VAT, everyone's going to suddenly start lining their pockets. But there's just all there's 15, 20 things that we'd like to do to reinvest into the business, into people, into training, and that would flow through supply chain, third party suppliers, and you know, or tech platforms or whatever. But we have to keep, every time there's another increase in minimum wage or another bit of cost inflation through your supply chain, you just have to start say, okay, right, we can't do that now. We're going to have to stop. And I think this is the reason why we're growing so slowly or not growing or a stop start. But again, as I think mentioned before on previous previous weeks, there's always someone who's open. I'm reading this week about a new wine bar, grill, small plates thing opening up in Queen's Park, and it sounds really exciting. And yeah, and there's that. And then there's another restaurant, there's 10 restaurant openings. There's another hot chicken brand that Pizza Express look like they might be partnering with, is it Texan Hot Chicken coming over? So another big American hot chicken player. And yeah, got me, we're thinking about about the chicken matrix of like dirty chicken to fancy fancy chicken.
Yeah, yeah.
Like where does it cross for you? You
I
know?
don't even know, like, it's fascinating when you think about individual cuisine types or niches, isn't it? And, like, I guess how well, how popular certain ones can be. Chicken is fascinating because it almost spans nearly every part of the market, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, and there's a Morley's opening up in Kilburn, and it's like, you know, classic late night fried chicken joint, right? It's quite cheap fried chicken. And then you'll have like a Popeyes, maybe, it's heavily branded, kind of maybe seen as a little bit fancier, maybe more acceptable on a certain time of day to go and have
Mhm.
a chicken sandwich, Popeyes. And then there'll be some, yeah, like fancy high end brand that's coming in that you'd be like, oh yeah, that would be cool. We should go check that out. I mean, materially, what you're eating is
Pretty much same.
pretty close. I mean, I don't care what I say, but I mean, I'm sure if I worked in the world of fried chicken, I'd be more clued up to the nuances of, the quality and indicators and all the rest of it.
Yeah, but I bet if you looked at the price differential between, the most value player and the, top of the market, I bet it's more than 100%
Oh God, yeah, 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 yeah,
for
yeah.
probably a product that isn't hundreds of percent different.
No, that market is growing massively. So clearly, because there's loads of people coming in and doing stuff. And then I read something from Foe about the owner or the founder or CEO. I can't remember. What's his senior person there? Thinks they get to 100 sites backed by a big private equity company, and so it's like there's people still on that train, obviously.
Mhm.
At the same time as there being loads of articles about everyone trimming sites and looking carefully at their estate and cutting down and
Yeah, but it just comes down to, like, the choices you make, in terms of sites. Like, I think I read this morning that, um, I might get this wrong, but I think it's Flight Club looking at Exeter as a location. And I'm just like, I don't know, like, is that, I know it's a big student town, but, like, is students really their market? Like, is there enough there in Exeter for, like, a Monday night and for, a Sunday at 12 o'clock? Is that one of those site choices that 3 years' time, they'll be like, "Ah, it was obviously never gonna do 50K, like, why did we ever think it was gonna do 50 grand a week?" Like, I don't know the full economics you know, of every city and every rent scenario, but you take a couple of thousand square feet, you're going to be paying city
yeah.
centre rent, aren't you?
I think it's a problem in those sorts of towns. It's probably pushing up the rents everywhere, where they're, big, like big players in the market going into regional towns and stuff and creating a sort of mini rent bubble. And then it's like, see, there's tons of sites available in nice smart market towns at the moment that once upon a time were all doing, whatever, 25, 30, 35K, enough to make some good money. Now that's not enough to make good money in those operations. And yeah, I guess if there's not heavily backed operators heavily backed by, you know providers of debt to go into that, then the local market would surely dip and they'd be incentivized,
Mhm.
independents to go in and kind of almost reset a little bit. But at the moment there still seems to be plenty of people to fill the gaps and like just plow on with kind of
Yeah,
growth
but I
strategies.
think it is something interesting for real multi-site, branded things where for whatever reason, and we've talked about this before, people start opening, what a few years later they look back on and be like, oh, why did we ever open that? Why did we ever do Crouch End or whatever it is, like.
Yeah. What struck me about this article about the foes, I'm like, I like them, they're good. But it's like, we're really excited about going into these towns like St Albans and they're like all the places that are just in my mind, these ring alarm bells. I'm imagining being an ops manager or a sort of regional director or something, and just having these like, right, we need to sit in a turnaround meeting to talk about Milton Keynes and
Yeah.
St
They
Albans.
never quite do what they were appraised to do, and then you're sort of fighting this uphill battle where, like just about doing 21 grand a week and doesn't quite make enough money. It's going to be now a 10-year payback, not a 2-year payback.
Yeah, and all of a sudden that's tanking the rest of your estate, and I guess it is interesting. Operators are just taking different approaches, and you want optimism, and you want money for piling into the industry, like of course, but it does feel like there's two really divergent attitudes at the moment, um, of you know looking inward, leaning out the estate, being focusing on profit, and and yeah, trying to get rid of anything that's a bit of an anchor, and then and
Mhm.
then and then opening up those opportunities that are like the market hasn't sort of dipped down. It doesn't seem like there's really good deals out there. Like landlords still want their pound of flesh, and there's always someone willing to sort of jump into that.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe there are better deals than we know about, and
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
you know, maybe some really savvy operating models now. I don't know, like maybe it's the faux model, which is quite quick service, it's fairly service light. Maybe that holds up better overall at a lower sales volume. You know, they sort of have quite small sites. Like maybe that's a bit of like a market town sort of strategy. I think I'd be being very cautious though if it was me opening sites in whatever you want to call them, not the
yeah,
biggest towns in the country.
yeah. So I feel like I'm being quite pessimistic about that, about that. When I'm usually saying, yeah, we should be positive about the industry and stuff. It's just something struck me about that kind of we can get to 100 thing. Just thought like that is got 10 years time exploded business written all over it. But that is me being negative about
You're
it.
you're on the back of a bad week, aren't you? You said you're feeling a bit woe is me today about the
Yeah.
industry.
I know. Usually, I'm on a high. I know. I'm still, look, still positive. There's reason to be cheerful. It was a miserable week of weather, and I think that was another thing that you remind yourself that everything you do, you can do so much, and then the weather turns nasty, and you tank.
Mhm.
We are all beholden to the gods of weather across all of hospitality, pretty much.
How are you feeling about well, it probably won't affect you too much, but prospective tube strikes? Does it give you a slight better week as people don't go into London?
Yeah, it's not bad for us. I think it doesn't really affect us massively. I think it can be a bit annoying for staff and kind of the behind the scenes logistics. But we have a lot of local staff who kind of jump on a bus, jump on a bike, or walk in anyway. So we'll be okay on that front. Yeah, it's not a huge problem for us. I mean, the things that affect us at the moment are end of the footy season, which that doesn't change. Like, with people suddenly get interested in, and it's a particularly interesting end of the season with relegation battles and championship deciders and stuff. There's obviously FA Cup final, so which was free to air, so we had it on, and it didn't do a huge amount for us. But there was a lot going on in London this weekend. Marches, protests, FA Cup final, and stuff happening.
What's the
So
what does the World Cup hold for pubs this
yeah,
year with the timings and I don't know, can you show it? I don't even know where it is. I'm not a
yeah,
football
a lot
man.
of it's on BBC. It's mostly on BBC. There's not a lot of
Is
noise at
it
the
is it
moment.
5, 9 and 1? Is that the three match times?
No, they're a bit. Well, the ones I've seen are. That might be. Oh, you mean like local, like our time, 5, 9, and 1.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I've seen some at 2, 3 in the morning. So because
Oh,
it's so spread out geographically. It's in Canada, all across America, and then both um, both coasts of America, and then Mexico as well. So yeah, it's no, I think it's. I don't know. I'm not hugely optimistic about it driving massive volume. I think it will increase a bit of dwell time. I think it's one of those things that will inevitably it'll be the very, 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 sort of thin end of a wedge that politicians can offer. It'll be like, oh, we're gonna let you trade for an extra hour during an England World Cup game or something, and that'll be then heralded as, we support pubs, we understand the sector,
yeah, yeah.
or we support hospitality. And it's just so insubstantial and kind of pathetic that that
Mhm.
anyone gets taken in by that. Really, I think that's the thing that we'll get. Yeah, and it doesn't really seem like there's a massive amount of coverage about it. There's a bit of negativity because it's America and it's Trump, and and he's been saying some weird things, and FIFA are pretty corrupt, and and there's been a lot of negativity around FIFA and it being a money making kind of endeavor. And so I don't know really. I think that when it happens, obviously, the end of the Premier League, as soon as that finishes, it'll be World Cup fever, and it's almost instantaneous that it kind of kicks in. We're I think under a month away, so it'll be, yeah, it'll be big as soon as it happens, and then there'll be a wave of optimism across England all of a sudden.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I actually to be fair, yeah, I haven't heard very much yet. Like there's not been a lot of England chat yet, has there?
Well, they haven't announced the team. They've announced a massive squad. Yeah, it's all going to sort of happen suddenly. It'll build up. I hope England do well. It'll give us a boost. If England get into the knockouts, of course, it will give hospitality a boost, and particularly pubs and places that can show the game. So yeah, and as long as they're on at times when you can normally trade, because I really don't want to be getting into the idea of opening specifically
But,
at
like,
one in
opening
the
early
one in the morning.
especially.
I think it's a we've done it before for across different businesses, loads of different events, and it's never really worked. Like you've got to work really hard at it. You've got to chuck some resource at it, and if it
Yeah, I think
fails,
you've almost gotta be selling tickets, especially, like I think it's one thing if you're, like, opening early or staying late by, like, a couple of hours because, like, if you had football that started at whatever, 5 and you normally open at 5 and you were like, "Oh, we'll open at 3 for a bit," that's one thing. But, like, I think if you're staying up open specifically later, you almost wanna be selling tickets for people to have a table and, guarantee a certain spend almost.
yeah, well, you're talking about getting tens and making sure you're covered with licensing, and you might be looking at door supervision if you're late night, and
Yeah.
the costs rack up really quickly, and your prime profit you're making out of it disappears really quickly. It's a bit like
Yeah.
Christmas Day, is it when you actually boil it down, you're kind of not really making much money. You're taking some good cash, but the costs ramp up quick, and then you've got to consider, well, is it you're doing as a sort of marketing thing to get bums on seats? You'd rather have bums on your seats than another seat.
Yeah, yeah,
Kind of
build a bit of goodwill, be part of the
goodwill,
community.
yeah, be part of it, and you look at it as an investment for the future. But I think we're pretty robust at the TAV, and we will be busy for the games and for England games. Yeah, I don't know, it's a tough one. But this is where even me just saying this, I'm kind of thinking if we had a bit more leeway, a bit more space in the P&L, we'd chuck some money at it. We'd have entertainers. You'd be paying a musician to come and play, or a DJ or something. And really now you're really questioning
Yeah.
that
Well,
spend.
you'd be decorating the pub, you'd be printing some specific materials probably, like, all of that stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, suppliers haven't really started to get behind it. Usually, you start getting loads of guff,
Yeah,
flags,
yeah.
and
Yeah, I wonder if the sort of like just, yeah, public, I don't know, sentiment's just not quite as with it at the moment. That's interesting. I thought it'd be interesting, Tom, to recover. I think, like, I don't know, a number of weeks ago we talked about learning to vibe code, and I think
yeah.
since then you've taken a bit of a foray into vibe coding. Is that right?
Mate, I have, and actually last week I started to build a little app to track our maintenance, and it's not quite where I want it to be now, but yeah, it's good. Like, it's really
Tell people
interesting.
what you built. Like, tell people what you
So
built, and then we'll talk more about the next one.
so it's obviously we had a conversation about using Lovable. I mean, there are plenty of other vibe coding
Other platforms
platforms out there.
also available.
Yeah, so I built two websites using that, and they are much better. They're not perfect. They are much better than the one that was sort of half built about 5 years ago by our mutual friend. It's the Bonsall. And then really, like, all the content was sort of provided by me, and it's been rehashed over the years. And it just, yeah, in terms of just updating it and adding to it, it's so much easier. I just use audio prompts, and you can just literally talk to it in common language. And then we had a news site that that was taking over from a previous operator. So we're taking over their domain. In the end, I had to set up a new domain because for some technical reason, in the background of their site, they couldn't hand over the domain. So I set up a new domain, super simple, all in Lovable, and launched it. But it was way down the Google rankings because this other site had been up for 10 years or whatever. And yeah, and so I just, I just asked it to do some SEO work on
Yeah,
it, and it automatically does that. And now we're right up there. And so you could just kind of get what you want out of just talking to it, and it does feel a bit absurdly easy. I guess you got to know what you
pretty
want.
awesome though.
Yeah, it is awesome. You got to know what you want, and I think so I'm slowly learning to refine the prompts and do
Mhm.
them, quicker and better. But yeah, the websites are pretty simple. They're not complicated sites, and I had a basis to build from. Where it gets a bit trickier is I'm trying to build this kind of app to work internally in the business to manage our maintenance stuff. And I started trying to build something a bit more complicated and shied away from it because actually it was getting really messy and it was wasting far too much time trying to do it. So I thought I'd just focus in on the maintenance side, because really I know exactly what I need, and
Mhm.
it's quite simple. And I just want the team to have the ability to sort of log onto something, share a
Yeah, like
picture,
log, track,
log,
all that sort of stuff.
track, yeah, and communicate with a few of us over it via email. And yeah, but you could log in and see where we are, see if you've got 10 outstanding issues in a site. And Yeah, it's kind of don't know quite how I feel about it because once upon a time you'd be going out to a specialist, and that would be another business you'd be working with, another supplier, a part of the supply chain. And in the broad hospitality sense, this is going to be is a sort of dangerous territory
Yeah.
for people that have historically provided solutions to the industry. Because if you're not cost effective, it is potentially much cheaper if you've got the wherewithal to do it to just build something yourself via one of these platforms. So you've got to be good. And I'm thinking about some big platforms, some of the biggest, the huge companies, big platforms that I've used in the past for labor management or whatever, and they are not very good at responding to what you want if they want to do some
Mhm.
developmental changes. And they're quite expensive. And these days, you just do it yourself, get exactly
Yeah,
what you
yeah.
want.
Well, or there'll be a whole wave, which I think we're starting to see now, of platforms be developed that can move super quickly, will move super quickly, and are sort of set up to do that. Like, and I think just before Christmas or just after Christmas, Sona Workforce Management, they announced that suddenly they've now built a whole recruitment platform and a learning management system. And you're suddenly like, okay, that's like, over the space of a couple of months, like two new whole product areas. There'll be those sort of businesses, and then and I think there will be a whole host of people who build things themselves. But then there's also just, why would you go with one of those legacy platforms that will just never be able to innovate, really?
Yeah, well, look, I had a really good conversation with guys from Monetary. I wouldn't be able to build what they can provide using this thing. So quite excited to pursue that, and that platform looks really like a game changer for how we can communicate and move fast within our business and build a learning platform that can accelerate our, all the challenges I talked about at the start of just like day-to-day ops stuff, tracking,
Yeah, yeah,
compliance, core behavior
yeah. But just
management.
like it's communication, like it's almost communication and culture at scale, isn't it? Like, how do you do that in a modern business?
Yeah, and
You need
and
a platform.
yeah, you do. And there's small aspects of so say maintenance is like is a key thing, right? Like you probably could build something within Monitoring. There's like a maintenance tracker. It'd be like an add-on. I don't know, but that's not really what they do. The core of what they're doing. So I think the future for smaller business, bigger businesses, to have a kind of all-in-one platform. As Monitoring a good example of it, that does all the comms, onboarding, training, and bring content in and his comms and sort of ops tracking and all that stuff. And then you can tag on your like little bespoke bits via building it yourself by via vibe coding.
Yeah, yeah.
And that feels to me like a really good place to be.
Oh, like it's super exciting
Yeah,
technologically. I had one more question for you, which was, I don't know if you saw, and I'm not even sure how I feel about it, but there was that news article last week about the Gale's salt situation.
really
Did you see
salty
this?
sandwich. Yeah. The
Really
article
salty
said
sandwich. I
he
thought that was kind
basically
of
said
interesting.
it was absolutely delicious. Yeah. Well, I cooked a dinner yesterday. I cooked some Dover sole and made like a beurre noisette kind of classic thing, and cooked some asparagus and green beans, and everything I was cooking had tons of butter and salt in it. And I read the article and I thought, yeah, I mean, it makes everything really tasty, doesn't it? So I don't know, I don't know, I don't know what they're getting at on the side of being an adult and making your choices and trying to be healthy. I do understand, there's some of these nutritional things that we need to signpost better.
Yeah, like, is that the thing though? Is it just actually like, I actually don't mind if something's really, 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 really bad for me, but in the haste of picking up a sandwich, maybe I want some more flags so I can make a better decision? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, why do people think things taste good? They've got loads of butter and loads of salt in them. I get really frustrated by the broader health lobby kind of, you should drink less, you should eat, you should dictate the kind of nanny state stuff. I think for a long time, policymakers have been influenced by, nudge theory and the idea that you have to have these big programs to push most people. Most people can't manage themselves. But I think that it also creates a sort of culture of lack of personal responsibility. I don't know. Am I talking from a position of privilege, or just because I'm relatively fit and healthy, do lots of exercise, I enjoy exercise, so I can, you know, eat what I want largely? And I don't know.
Yeah,
But
well, it's probably a bit of all of those things. And I guess you got to try and work out, especially if you're a big producer of things like food, or if you're legislating for this kind of stuff, like what's the right middle ground, right? Like if you're producing a super delicious sandwich, like do you also have responsibility to, you know, not make it contain your 100% of your daily recommended allowance of salt? or should you signpost that, or should you just be like, we make a delicious sandwich, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, I always think back to when I was doing a placement when we first started out in Scream pubs, and it was this is going, going back 50, probably longer,
20 years.
20 years, yeah. And I was in the marketing team. 20 years ago, they were talking about putting calories on menus. And
Yeah,
Scream
yeah.
was like, these student pubs. And I remember we did this massive like chocolate. We were doing the calories for the
Was it a
menu.
chocolate cake, chocolate fudge cake?
Yeah, yeah, it's like some horrific, enormous fudge chocolate slice. And the calories were
I
like
remember it well.
2,600 per slice or something. And I remember saying, it's a student brand. We should market that as like, get your whole daily allowance in this,
It was
you know.
probably less than a fiver as well.
Oh, mate, it was like £2.69 or something ridiculous, And everything on the menu was basically a baguette filled with highly processed meat with cheese on it, a barbecue sauce,
Yeah.
and then more cheese under the grill, and done. Chips. So like everything was mad calories. I was like, yeah, you should advertise it. Get your super calorie dense food, students. Come and get your calories in, for not very much money. And obviously, I'm joking and being a bit stupid about it, but at the time, we were talking about it, and the marketing strategy was to talk about it being an indulgence, a one-off, I think. And I just think people should educate about eating whole food and eating properly, and that's a broader education piece. But then ultimately, people make the choices, right? We don't stop people smoking. There are lots of things out there that try and signify the health benefits, but let's face it, Treasury still makes a boatload of money out of tax, tobacco, and the rest of it. It's kind of it's up to people to make the choices, right? I think the information should be out there, and there probably needs to be some more structural support in place, years education and low income households and communities that are potentially not able to access healthy food, and I don't know. But yeah, in terms of should Gales have to reduce the salt content of that, absolutely not.
No, but I mean, also annoyingly, they probably will, which is like, again,
Oh, I thought it was quite a good article for Gales because the guy was like, "This is absolutely delicious." That was the takeaway that
well,
I
you're off to Gale's later for lunch.
mate. It looked great, yeah.
Yeah, but the worst part is I think also when brands get, they get headlined for this stuff, and you're like, there are probably 100 other examples in the market, and then it sort of puts undue focus on, or like perception that now Gales is either sneaky or unhealthy, when actually, almost like you said, it's just the cost of really delicious food sometimes is things that are not very good for you.
Yeah, well, you don't get this in high-end places, right? And you also don't get it at home. So you make something at home, I'm shoving loads of butter and loads of salt and loads of stuff into
Six
it.
grams of salt is actually not very much salt. Like if you're gonna put that all over a dinner, like
Well, when I saw the picture of it, I was like, all right, that's not very much. I literally put that on, sprinkle that on the top of at the end of the cooking after loads of salt's gone into it. But look, I'm being slightly facetious, but you shouldn't be eating these foods every single day. I'm a massive advocate of just eating whole food. And personally, yeah, I've probably listened to some of the broader information out there, the kind of being nudged to eat slightly less meat and, eat more oily fish and stuff like that. I mean, the thing that frustrates me about those things is that the dietary information, it changes a bit, but there's so many fads and knee-jerk reactions to things out there. But all the information you need is kind of out there. Let's go read a couple of books that haven't really changed much over the last 20 years and move more, eat healthy, get on with it.
yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. Well, at least you've sort of cheered up slightly. On that
Yeah,
note, I might get out and go move some more and go for a walk. I think that's my next plan.
indeed. What else you got planned this week? What's coming up for you?
I have got a whistle stop tour up to Manchester. That's what I'm got getting ready for going away. We're off up north camping on Saturday.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'll see you on the Tuesday. Just very briefly, though, you mentioned Manchester. That is an interesting one. Obviously, in the spotlight, it's kind of been talked about because Burnham, the mayor of
Mhm.
Manchester, and there's leadership bid and stuff. And so people are talking about what he's done. I guess Manchester suddenly, like what he's done in Manchester or what's been going on in
Yeah,
Manchester. And it's quite interesting. I was listening to a radio program the other day, and there's some, a few different people were calling in and saying, yeah, like what he's done in Manchester has been good. He's attracted loads of external investment, and Manchester's booming and this stuff. But also didn't like some of the some of the other things that I didn't like him personally, or some of the other things he's done. Manchester is an outlier in
Mhm.
in the sense of being a local economy is growing fast, and particularly in hospitality. I've spent a bit of time up there the last year, and yeah, loads of openings, lots of brands are moving from London to there. So it's like a staging post for UK-wide expansion, and doing incredibly well, and like lots of big brands going there and realizing that actually that some of the most successful sites in their whole estate. Manchester's kind of a really interesting case study of an area or a sector or a locality that's kind of booming.
I'd love to know more about what he's specifically done there that seems to have, yeah, really kept the economy moving.
My take on it is it's got quite a strong independent sector as well. I don't know if there's we should look into it a little bit more and speak to some operators up there. I mean, at the same time, there's operators in that area, like mentioned earlier. Gary Ush is saying that there's certain sites that they can't make work. So it's not
Yeah,
immune. It's not like it's not all great up there. Not immune to all the problems that everyone else is experiencing in terms of the just cost of doing business. But yeah, my reading it was that it was kind of thriving.
yeah. I think you're right. It probably also because it is quite independent focused and it's quite, you know, I guess quite loyalty driven. Like people are kind of feels like there's a more of a desire to like go support their, industry, support their town in a way that maybe we're not as connected in London.
Yeah, well, I felt that people were just up. I don't know. This is a really like on the ground, smelling the air kind of thing. But when I took some team members out, some younger team members for a few beers one night, and it just felt like everyone was sort of up for it. The bars were full. Felt like a bit of energy. I don't know if it's because it's a huge student town, and because it's a smaller city centre, you feel the presence of there being loads of
Mhm.
students. Could be that. But yeah, it felt like the nightlife had a lot more energy to it in a way that sometimes London doesn't feel like that, and can be a bit disjointed with sort of higher end bars and restaurants. The high street isn't as sort of
Mhm.
cohesively together. But yeah, maybe there's just a bit more out for a big one. Manchester.
Yeah, I think that's probably also true. The North, more often than not, are just up for a big one.
Yeah. London needs to rediscover the art of the big night out, mate.
Exactly. Right. Tom, we'll
You heard it
leave it
here
there
first.
today. Lovely to catch up.
Nice one. See you soon.
Ciao.